I'm Greg Reitman. I'm a Sundance alum filmmaker, and I started out as a filmmaker, and then eventually moved into creating a film festival, which we're here today, which is called the Blue Water Film Festival. And I think the really most important thing is we're a filmmaker-friendly festival, and I want to make that distinction first and foremost, because for those that are going to go out in the world and learn about film festivals, they all have different programs and genres and do different things, and some service different things. And we at Blue Water are very clear about that particular mission and how important it is to be in line with our filmmakers. I would say that we're not 100%. We try to do our best, but we're always in the interest of trying to understand what their needs are and trying to accommodate the best we can as a small nonprofit that's growing too quickly. So that's just a leading conversation. And I'm really excited to have Sebastian because I have a lot of friends that have gone to the Riviera International Film Festival and have said really great things about your festival. And I would love to just start this conversation with one, I think it's a really important piece of information is, what was the inspiration behind Riviera? Like, why'd you do it?
First of all, I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm a film producer, as you know, and I've been doing it for a while. But, you know, I was inspired by the lack of interest for young independent filmmakers at big festivals. So you go to Cannes, you go to Venice, you go to all these great film festivals, and then, you know, you find yourself in a room at 9:15 a.m. watching a very beautiful independent film, and there are 3 people in the room. So over the years, I started thinking, you know, all this stuff made me think, and I'm thinking, why, instead of like, you know, being in a situation like that, and why don't we create a festival where actually these kids are the stars, and the stars are just almost irrelevant, but complementary, meaning they rotate, so they come as guests to inspire young filmmakers. So that's how it started. So we selected a great location on the coast, beautiful place, Sestri Levante, which is on the coast of Portofino. And we have only 1 theater, 3 screens, but the festival started 8 years ago and exploded now. And like we have like Susan Sarandon and Casey Affleck coming. This year we have tons of interesting people.
Talk a little bit about just how, you know, I mean, Portofino is obviously a beautiful place, you know, in Italy, but can you talk a little bit about just when they come into the film festival and what they're, and how you created that village so they're together a little bit and behind that, and
yeah,
how important that is?
Yeah, one other thing that I kind of saw at bigger film festivals is the distance between the filmmakers and the audience. So you always just, you know, you go to Cannes, you cannot go to see a film, for example. And I love Sundance because Sundance, you know, there are theaters and, you know, you buy a ticket and you find yourself watching the film with, I don't know, Brad Pitt sitting in front, who is in the film. So there is no red carpet, there is no separation between the public and famous people or like filmmakers, big filmmakers. So we decided to replicate that concept. And so, you know, whoever is invited, whether it's big celebrities, Oscar winners, or directors or actors, we tell them that they have to be they have to be patient with people, meaning, you know, it's a small village, so you're bound to meet the same people over and over because, you know, such a tiny place. So if you are Casey Affleck, or if you are, I don't know, Matthew Modine, like, you know, or Susan Sarandon, and someone asks you to have coffee with you, you have to say yes. You can't, you can't,
No, I mean,
you can't just say, no, I'm a celebrity, goodbye, you know, here are my bodyguards. There is nothing like that at the Riviera Film Festival. That's why it grew from a tiny little festival to something that we're putting it together now, because it's going to be May 6th to the 11th. And it's becoming very difficult to control now. That's how big it has become, because we're the same team. It's like, you know, you are a team of people, and you build a house, and the house is this big.
Yeah, and the house
now the house is this big. It's the same group of people. So we're struggling to find other people and to just, but it's, you know, we do it for the love of filmmaking. It's a non-profit organization. We select 10 movies of directors under 35, 10 documentaries about the environment, and 10 shorts.
So you're pretty much of the same programming style as me.
Yeah.
The only
it's
difference
very
is
simple.
we're doing animation.
Yeah, no, we don't do animation, but not because we don't like it. We don't have the room. We have 3 screens.
I see.
So we don't have, it's basically back-to-back movies from Wednesday to Sunday, nonstop, from 10 a.m. to midnight.
Wow. You know, I just wanted to comment too, he was mentioning Sundance. You know, Sundance took the model of Telluride Film Festival,
Yes.
which was one of my first film festivals that I went to, and it's the same sort of street that you walk in, and thought that looked like Anna. Come on, Anna, come on up. We're filming live, but it's okay. We're gonna put you right there. It's a great segue too, just talk about Telluride, because this is where talking about like just having coffee, I ended up befriending Andy Garcia and Stephen Bauer, and met them, and then having coffee with them, and became friends with them, and met other people in the same way. And I think that's really what's so great about, and I would say the same thing about Take Advantage here at the Blue Water Film Festival. There's an intimacy, which is the most important part, where you'll actually get to connect with people, whether it's Kathleen Quinlan, I'm not sure where she is, or Taj Mahal, or others that are coming in, or Jeff Gardner, who's a famous fashion designer, where you can actually have a meaningful conversation, and you can build a new relationship. And for us, I think the same thing with probably Riviera, and I'm sure Anna's gonna probably chime in as well, is that's how we create our Blue Water family. And I think that's really the ethos of our festival, and I'm sure the same as yours, is that collection of great filmmakers who say great things, who have a great experience, create new bonds, new friendships, and then eventually one of them will become famous.
Yeah.
And then they pull them forward.
We like, you know, I was talking backstage about something that happens to us, for example. Like usually film festivals, they select a very tiny number of female directors' films. And, you know, you go to Cannes, Venice, and you look at the statistics, and it's 5% of female directors selected in competition, etc. Our principle is that we don't look at who the director is. So when we are sent the links, you know, these are people, they're young directors, under 35, from everywhere, from Africa, Hungary, or like, you know, Greenland, I don't know, US. So you watch the movie, but you don't look at the name of the director, and you base your choice on the film, on what you see.
We do the same thing, and it's very interesting, because I know Sundance has actually changed that now. They down the line, it's 50-50 now.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
it's now, of that selection will be, you know, split between male. And I always felt like it should never be judged by gender. It should be judged by the content and the merit of the filmmaker. And if there are, 90 women and 10 men. That's just the way it is,
it's
and
too
vice versa.
Yeah.
It should, but I understand the ethos behind it.
Yeah.
I just want to just take a step back. We were talking about, and as you walked through, what is the uniqueness part of your particular film festival? We're talking about the intimacy about Riviera, and we're talking about the Blue Water Film Festival, how we're trying to create relationships and a new family. Maybe you can share a little bit about, because you're a niche film festival, what your unique value proposition is for filmmakers.
Well, thank you, and sorry I was late. My flight landed late. I just got in from San Francisco, and we just had our big fundraiser last night. So, I think for us, it's, again, it's ocean community. It's people who just really appreciate our ocean. There's an opportunity to meet so many people. And to learn so much about the ocean. I think there's really exciting things about it. We're right on the water, so we're at the end of a pier. When you come out of the building, you can see Alcatraz to one side, and then you can see the Golden Gate Bridge on the other side. So you're constantly reminded about why we are here, or why we're at that film festival. This year we have, I think, about 34 films. It's in 3 weeks. But we have about 34 films, and I think there are maybe 25 filmmakers coming. So almost every film has a filmmaker. And
How do you do that?
Well, and it's not even...
Are you taking care of their lodging, their flights?
We take care of some of them. Those that are coming internationally obviously get first choice. We have a lot of hotels that sponsor us, that give us free hotel nights, 2 nights per film, so that staying and lodging is never a problem. I just think people really want to go to San Francisco. Yes. And, so that is the biggest incentive for people wanting to come. A lot of people also already know people in San Francisco that they can stay with.
And what's so great about San Francisco, you have a great transportation system, right?
Exactly.
So you land and you can pretty much get on the BART.
Exactly. So there's good public transportation. I mean, in the hotels, some of them are downtown, and people like that, so they can spend time downtown just sightseeing and shopping or whatever. But going back to your question or your comment about male-female, I like what you do. I like that you don't look at the gender of the director. Haven't done that yet, but that's something to think about.
2 years ago, there was a case, we realized when we selected the 10 films that of the 10 films selected in competition, 7 were female directors.
Oh, wow.
But we had because, some of the names are names like, Asian names or so you really don't focus on the name of the filmmaker.
Right.
You know where it comes from, but you don't look at who is involved.
And it's interesting.
It helps a lot.
I bet it does, yes. And it's funny because I might experience that this year. After 14 years of being the executive director of the film festival, I finally made my own film. I've made my own film. It's premiering at the film festival. It's showing in a lot of locations. So now I'm in the shoes of a filmmaker. And so I have a feeling we're going to experience that where, you don't get enough recognition as female director. I have a film partner, also female. And then we gave out awards for female filmmakers. At one point, we were like, let's acknowledge that there are women making these films, and some of them are so great they should have an award. What's so interesting is a couple of the jury members said, we don't want to do that. We don't want to recognize them for being female directors. We just want it to be a level playing field. We don't want to call out that they're female. They're already on the same playing field, so why emphasize that? So,
but if you don't do that, it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
So I can tell you a gazillion stories of my producing experience in Los Angeles, and even lately. I have a TV series that, we're pitching to all the streamers, and it's written by a female writer, and it's a super violent TV series, and the agency kept sending me names of male writers because the the story is very violent, so they thought a woman couldn't write. And I happened to find a woman, a female. Yes, true. And it's crazy, but we found like a super talented screenwriter, European, who writes only violent films. And if you see her, she looks like the typical nice-looking woman. And and so I brought her into the meeting, and they were looking at me like, she's good for a romantic comedy. And I said, no, watch what she does, then we talk. So there are a lot of these things that I think need to be, so you have to push it always.
Exactly, and wasn't it Kate Blanchett who this year at Cannes spoke up, or last year? Last year she spoke up and said not enough female directors were being recognized, so, yeah.
So I want to segue, it's really interesting. So all of our film festivals have an environmental theme to it. And I'm curious, obviously you're front and center, Ocean International Film Festival, Riviera, and Blue Water, obviously. But I want to know, what was it, like, why that particular lane? Like, why did you decide, like, well, maybe you can start, Stefano, when obviously taking Best Directors, but why did you make that imprint of taking environmental films for your festival? And I'd also love to know, to you, Anna, what was the bigger genesis? I understand that you're on the coast, but was there something personal that drove you to want to do that? 'Cause I think it's a very particular niche that we're curating, and these are special films, as we know, and special artists that are coming in that really care. So I'm curious to know your backstories and why.
It's kind of a simple story, because we realized that, obviously, films and documentaries are very important, to change everything, to change the world, the way people think, and, so the best way, in our view, was to select documentaries and show these documentaries to very young people. People of my age are completely useless, okay, in the business of, ecology and the green business. It's the people that are now 13 years old that need to see certain things. So you come to our festival and the room is packed with teenagers and people a little bit older, but mostly teenagers. So we decided to do it because of that, and because it's a very beautiful place on the coast, with, like, every place on the coast deals with pollution, so every year besides the documentaries, we invite one foundation. Okay. This year we have the ocean cleanup, which you may know. Big foundation, big organization. Last year we had another. Each year we have a different type of foundation that comes and just, shows what they do.
And how do you go about choosing that?
I don't know. It happens.
Is there a particular piece of content that you're finding that supplements that particular mission?
Yeah, no, they all of them, they bring something. Either it's a documentary. We had Sea Shepherd. Of course. They brought a beautiful documentary, and so they show films or documentaries, and then they talk about what they do. I think it's, whether you live by the sea or, by the mountains, it's pretty obvious what needs to be done, and some of these documentaries are very depressing.
Yes.
So that's the problem with selection, because you don't want to have people committing suicide to just watching and saying, there is no hope for this,
We don't take any depressing docs.
No, but there are we kind of mix them. Some of them are catastrophic,
yes,
which is unfortunately what it is. And some of them are a little bit more hopeful. So you see people actually doing things, changing things. Even small stories sometimes are very important.
Well, for us in San Francisco. I'm not the founder of my festival. I've been doing it long enough, 14 out of the 22 years, that people think I am the founder. But the origin of our festival started at the Dolphin Swimming and Rowing Club in San Francisco.
Wow.
And it's on Aquatic Park, which is right down at Fisherman's Wharf. And it's a cove, and it's beautiful. And these are the crazy people that go swimming in San Francisco cold water without a wetsuit. And very proud of it, too, by the way. So a little on the crazy side, but, you know, it's like taking a cold plunge, the endorphins get going, et cetera, et cetera. So a group of them got together in your classic nonprofit, you know, startup scenario at someone's kitchen table in their house. And I think two things. They were seeing plastics and garbage coming in. And what we find at Aquatic Park so much, which is very interesting, is we find a lot of cigarette butts. And that's primarily now, in this day and age, from tourists who come to San Francisco. So I think in the US, people are smoking less, but so that's where we find a huge concentration of cigarette butts. So they were seeing them as they were swimming, they were seeing the plastics, and they were also influenced by Banff. You know, Banff comes into town, they do their films, you know, whether it's skiing or rappelling, you know, big adventure type films. And they saw the impact that Banff had on audiences and how many people would flock to see those films. And they thought, well, we should start a film festival about the ocean. And that's pretty much how it started. And I am very lucky. I still have jury members who are from the very first day at the festival.
So do you keep the same jury every year?
No, we've added some jury members lately. We've added some younger jury members, but I do have 3 that have been with the festival since day one.
So maybe talk a little bit about your jury. I mean, this is another thing. I mean, for us, just at Blue Water, we have 3 jury. I mean, I curate, but I have 3 in each category, and I let them choose the winner unless there's a tie. We need to have an intervention. What about you, Anna?
You know, it's so interesting. We've been doing it more out of habit and just because we've been doing it this way for a long time, where we've had at least 10 to 12 jury members, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
It's too many, and we know that we're going to change it up now. And everyone...
How do you get those ballots in time?
Well, what we do is everybody has access to all the films. We're divided up into 3 groups.
Okay.
People watch the films, they score it. We have a very elaborate scoring chart, criteria listed. We don't do it through Film Freeway like a lot of people do. We meet every 2 weeks in person, starting in September through December. And that is where we get so much fun. I provide dinner and we meet for like 3 hours. But we have really good conversations about the content of all of the film. And I have a marine mammal expert. Actually, I have 2 now. I have someone who was a former producer in film. I have an architect, but he's so passionate and he's watched almost every film. You know, he comes with his binder with all the data printed out for each film. I have, I know I'm forgetting somebody, but you know, we have a lot of people with a lot of experience or expertise in all the different categories that we represent on the screen. So. And
how many awards do you give out?
It varies by year, but about 9 to 10. You know, some years, if we don't have a really good film on innovation, for example, then we don't give out an award. This year we didn't have any animation films, which is kind of surprising, and we like to...
I can tell you why, because Gene Thorne, who's here, we partner with the Animation Magazine, and the animation industry is going through a very rough time, and I was just commenting this year, because we usually have a plethora of animation films, and this year we still had some, but it was very soft. Versus in former years, and the Animation Magazine, for those that don't know, and that you can see in your gift bag and the magazines, I mean, she's at the hub of it. And she was just saying it's getting really, really hard now to make animation, and it's really expensive. So that's probably...
I'm not surprised, and it's funny because the animation that we have had is just amazing.
You
And
have
they're-
up in your backyard, you have Pixar.
We have Pixar, yeah, and there's a filmmaker who did one on sharks, and it's hilarious, and it's great, and it's the attention to detail, the drawings are just incredible. But and people like animation. People want to see
Oh,
animation.
no, we the reason why we started our animation category, you'll get a kick out of this, Sebastian, is because you mentioned about the comment about documentaries, about the gloom and the doom. So it gets so visceral through an animated world, they can see it and it won't be, they can digest it in a more palatable way. So it's more, I would say, kid-friendly, and really getting to the same root cause of what the problem is as it relates to plastic pollution, right? So you can only watch so much of plastic pollution at a certain point. You're just like, this is gross, right? You just turn the dial. And so that's the reason why we flipped the channel and did animation, because we found a way where we couldn't tell that story in that format. And we said, okay, well, we see these films that are coming in, and we're growing that particular category for that reason, because it's just, you can't show them anymore. It's just, people just turn off.
It depends. Like, some of them are more hopeful.
Yes.
Like, you see people doing things for their own communities, and others are very repetitive because, you have the same microplastic documentaries every year. Some of them are genius. Like, they come up with ideas for different angles. Like, so,
But I want to pivot back. Can you talk? I'm sorry, I got off topic. My apologies. I'd love to talk a little bit about your jury. Like, how do you go about your selection, and how is that comprised every year?
The selection that we have about, depending, every year it changes. Usually we have 9 jurors. We have 5 for films and 4 for documentaries. We tend to not select experts for documentaries. We have usually in the jury one more technical person, expert in just, the environment. But the rest of the jurors are like, artists or actors or directors, because I think, sometimes you look at something from a perspective that if you're not involved in it, it makes it more interesting and it's more challenging, of course. But I think that makes it more interesting. And some of the choices are very strange, obviously. But that's how. And for the films, we have like a film, like a jury. Yeah, we tend to invite some actors and directors.
I think also we have, like I said, we have a marine mammal expert, and
I think you have to, because you're so like on the nose. I
Yeah.
think in terms of like
special.
your
Yeah.
content.
yeah, and it's interesting because they understand if the content is misleading or if it's inaccurate.
The whole science behind knowing.
Yeah, and so having that is extremely helpful for us. In fact, there's an organization that wanted to they submitted a film, and then they wanted to do a panel discussion, and we didn't select the film because it was too scientific. It was great, but it was so scientific. And I mean, this is a organization that we have a great relationship with. And so my marine mammal expert said, this doesn't fit what we like to do for our community, excuse me, and so we just can't show it. And then they came back and said, well, then we're not going to do the panel discussion if you didn't take my film. And I was like, but you have constantly been telling me and reassuring me that you would still show the film, you would still do the panel discussion regardless of whether or not we selected the film. And they ended up choosing to do the panel discussion. So, and they're going to have a really good time. And they're going to show this film during the panel discussion, which makes it a non-official selection. It's like showing a short film here. But it was challenging because they just expected us to say yes. And she wrote like 5 really lengthy bullet points as to why this film should not have been. And I would not have known that. I'm not a marine biologist. I don't know it in that attention to detail. So in that regard, it's nice to have somebody like her, but also my architect, he's passionate about the ocean. He's not a swimmer. He's not a diver. He just brings a perspective that I think is extremely valuable to me, because he's just like a general audience member, if you will. And then I have a diver, and then I have an ecologist who's a professor. And, I think 4 out of the 10 or 12 are swimmers at the Dolphin Club, so we maintain that connection. So it's fun, but it's also, I think, very labor intensive when you have that many people. And ultimately, I curate it. They let me curate.
You have to.
I have to.
I was
And
gonna say,
oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think at the end, a science mind and a film mind, I think, are a little bit different.
Or it's just like there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes with films that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And there's one this year that is a little on the depressing side. And they didn't, everybody was like, no, we can't show this, it's too depressing. And I see it as we have a responsibility to show it, There's something out there happening in the world, and it may not be pretty, and it may not something that we want to know about or like, but how are we going to know that it's happening and therefore try to fix it or change it or have a call to action unless we show it?
I was going to say,
So-
I think there's nothing problem with the film if it has that particular thread, as long as there's some sort of social impact behind it and there's a call to action, I think makes the most sense.
Is it okay to open it up to questions, you guys? I didn't mean to interrupt, but we got about 5
I
minutes
got one more
left.
thing, and then I'm going to say, want to segue, because
Yeah.
it's a really important part as a festival director. I just want to chat about distribution and the role of a festival for distribution, and how important, as your festival grows, both of ours, obviously you've been around the longest. How do you interface? Can you talk a little bit about distribution in your film festival?
Meaning, we invite distribution companies, we
Yes.
invite streamers, we invite, I'm talking about Italian streamers, and some of the films are bought.
Yeah.
A couple of, 2 documentaries ended up on Sky,
Amazing.
Sky Italy, of course, but
Which has a ripple back to Sky.
yeah,
in the
exactly.
UK.
Exactly. This is just, these are films that normally they disappear
Yeah.
or if they're lucky, they get purchased or acquired by Mubi, for example. But a lot of them, they just, go away. So when you have a couple of them who you see them being, one of our film was distributed in America last year. One of the filmmakers, a Norwegian woman who directed this incredible film, and it came out in America. I mean, it's crazy what's going on.
I think
but,
it's
but
great.
most of them they have problems with distribution, yes.
They all have problems.
They all have, well, distribution is really hard too. I mean, I think it's not, so when you're making a film, when we were making our film about disappearing kelp in Northern California, distribution was just constantly on our mind. And where is this gonna get distributed? Who's gonna wanna pick it up based on, without being too scientific? Is it a story about a community? So we invite the distributors to come as well. They come. I think in some of our films, they're on the festival circuit. And so once they've had 4 or 5 film festival screenings, then people start to pay attention. Yeah. So we know that we're helping to fuel that interest by screening it.
And I think that's going to grow because the niche audience is now, they're starting to understand the value of that. So,
but what I think I'm also seeing is because streamers and distributors are making their own content, they don't necessarily need the content that our filmmakers are making. So we're at that inflection point, and I don't know which way it's going to go. But when you start seeing Netflix is the first one that comes to mind, start making so many films about anything, and they just seem to do it overnight. Even in the documentary space, it's interesting because you're like, well, but there's all these great films that we have, and they end up on a shelf, and we don't want that to happen either. So it's interesting.
all right, Dana.
Thank you.
Questions?
Anybody have a question? No? Oh, good. Here we go.
I'm not very familiar with methodology more deep. Can you say about general public when they vote, in which moment, and take you in accounting when you count which film is better? And it's before festival or how long it take, or it doesn't matter at all? I mean, general public who can see it before, or it's no opportunity to see it.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Not understand. I mean, you have jury, people who vote, and you have audience. How audience vote just only during festival, or
Correct.
it's possible, and how they count, jury count, opinion of audience.
They're separate.
They separate.
They're separate. So, for example, like I think all my films have won the Audience Award. And it says, from a distribution point of view, it's a big deal. Because sometimes the distributor has in their mind about a film, and then when an audience decides to choose that particular film, it raises the value of the film tremendously. So I can share with you, for example, I made a film back in the day called Fuel, which won the Audience Award at Sundance. And on that Tuesday, the Hollywood Reporter wrote an article that my filmmaker was crying in tears because he crucified the film. And I said to the filmmaker, I said, don't worry. I said, we're going to win the Audience Award. No one's going to remember that article. And truth be told, we won the Audience Award, and no one remembers the article that was written from the Hollywood Reporter about how this particular person didn't like the film because he was in the film, he's a protagonist, and he thought it was very narcissistic. And the reality was that he made judgment, and the audience loved him. So from his point of view as the critic, he said, no, I don't like it, and therefore it's not good.
I would make it illegal for critics to review independent films.
I agree too. And just so you know, I mean, there's a whole...
Because, you when you make a big film, and, even a bad review doesn't count, because, you have a marketing machine behind, tons of money that you spend on TV and ads. But when you make a small independent film and you put your heart for like years, and you make the movie for $500,000, $1 million, you get one bad review, and it's over.
That's why we had a
It's
particular
done.
film that we were planning on showcasing, and it was planning on going out release 3 weeks. They wouldn't let us release it because they were so worried that someone at the San Diego Tribune would write a bad review, and that was it. So, and I can even share with you behind the scenes in terms of the various publicity machines. They know every critic. They know exactly who's going to see the film, who's not going to see the film. I mean, when you're starting out as a young filmmaker, you don't know any of these things. It's like walking into a forest, and you don't really understand anything within the forest. And then all of a sudden, it gets clearer and clearer as you go. As you start making more and more films, you become more aware of the pitfalls that you need to watch. And unfortunately, most people don't know, but if you want to hire a PR firm, it's going to cost you $30,000 out of the gate. How many filmmakers have an extra $30,000 when they've just, put their film on their credit cards and they're bleeding, right? So this is the dance that you have to learn, and it's okay because we all learn it and we overcome it. And I always say, the audience will choose. They will help you get through, and they will. It's a great question.
That's what festivals are for, because sometimes you show a film that no one, maybe it would have flopped in a situation like a distribution, like or on a streamer, and you show it. So you give a chance to films that normally are not even reviewed to actually be seen. And I think the function of a film festival is exactly that, to be a platform, but to try to just elevate films that normally are not being elevated. So you have to choose films that are very unusual and sometimes beautiful, over some films that are more commercial and are easier for them to get distribution. The only way for them to show the film is a festival, because otherwise, how do you do it? You know, you have to. You can upload it on YouTube if you want, but then you have to have the money to make people aware that there is a film on YouTube to watch.
And I think this is why we should end with this. It's such a great panel. Is that even though these are very unique film festivals, these are great festivals. If you have a niche film that wins, like the grand jury at your festival or even our festival, the buyers are now aware of it. They know the niche. They're more aware. And like an entity, like for example, when we first started out with Nat Geo, we started with Nat Geo. We did the film Playing with Sharks, and we ended up being their second screening coming out of Sundance. It was a great way for us to launch our festival. But we also learned a lot about Nat Geo. We learned about how they think, how they operate, how they buy, what they're looking for, what they want. And for us, that was a huge learning curve. Like for them, they don't even want a film to be on a film festival. They want to be the ones to be able to take the film and put it on a film festival. So, you know, so as a filmmaker, you're more trained to think about the art of the creation of it. You're not thinking on the other side about the distribution side. And so it's really great to have for you here. And it's one of the things that we wanted to start at our film festival is a program called Meet the Festival Director. So the filmmakers can actually have a one-on-one experience, and they can have a dialogue with Anna, with Sebastian, and then, Stefan, sorry. Sorry, I don't know the third time. But it's important because once you have that relationship, you have that relationship for life, and then and it really garners, because let me tell you, like when they're going through their selection process, if they know the filmmaker and they know the film, they're going to pull your film and they're going to look at it in a different lens. Anyway, I'm getting the cut.
Yeah. If I could just add to that, it's interesting because, you know, you form so many great friendships and relationships in film festivals with filmmakers, with each other. Last night we had our annual gala, and we had Luis Hoyos in the room. Of course. And in March of 2010, February of 2010, we showed his film, which was The Cove, and which is about the dolphins in Taiji. And here we are all, and that was his very first film. He had not even taken film classes or film school, and the following month he went on to win the Academy Award for Best Documentary for that film. So to this day, when I mention the film The Cove, everyone knows about it, everyone knows who Louis is, and he was there last night with his nephew, and it was just fantastic because we know him, and there were some distributors, there were some other filmmakers, and you know, but it put us on the map because it was an Academy Award winner, so.
Okay, I'm getting the squeeze. I want to thank everybody for a wonderful panel and my guests. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Really,
We'll be around.
We'll do it every year.
Beautiful job, everybody. And a
you.
wonderful in Stefano, Greg. Next up, we have 5 minutes. And we have production, the challenge is shooting in nature. This is an incredible one. And you're going to hear from the filmmakers, and you have to see the film. So stick around, 5 minutes, and we're back on stage.